Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. LaRene, great to see you.
Hey, great to see you, Doug. Where every day's a great day in this beautiful garden.
This is Jessop's Journal.
Time to sign in to Jessop's Journal.
Oh, I've been looking forward to that. What a privilege.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. It's time for another entry into Jessop's Journal. Today, I'm with LaRene Bautner. So, LaRene, we're social distancing, and okay, let's hand sanitize, you know.
Of course.
Thanks to Five Wives. They're the guys that make my hand sanitizer. So, number one, thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely.
You and I have known each other
Privilege to be
for a long time, and we share a whole bunch of different interests, and one of those that I would say is we're both plant geeks.
Of course.
Yeah, that's all the stuff. So I'll let you give a shameless plug as to why we know each other plant-wise.
Well, as you know, every day's a great day at Millcreek Gardens, and when you come in, you are always lit up like a banner, and you're searching for those beautiful plants for your yard as well as for the set here at the station. And you know, besides every day's a great day at Millcreek Gardens, there's also plants and people and connections to be made, and that's part of the mission statement of my life, is to connect people and plants and do it in the funnest way possible.
And you definitely do that, you know. And so, you know, for me, a lot of the love that I learned of plants was from my grandfather. And so we would go out and do the roses and everything. I have to admit, okay, strange little story, but so, and I was young enough that I didn't know what it meant. So my grandfather would come out and have dinner with us every Sunday. And so we'd always go, and I would take him on a tour. So I say, hey, Gramps, you know, it's time to go, you know, take a tour of the George Youngquist Memorial Rose Garden. My mother was mortified. It's like, Memorial, it's like, oh. But he laughed, and we just kept going, you know. So was there somebody that helped you get that spark of loving plants?
Well, there was many, but there's just a wonderful experience I've had with my grandmother in her gardens. And she had the most amazing garden with things like hibiscus, bleeding hearts, cranesbill wild geranium, burning bush, which is the beautiful fall color big shrub. She had a small hedge of those in her yard, and she planted bulbs. And it was every Memorial weekend we would go to her house after saving the tins of the cans for a few weeks beforehand, and we would go to her home. She would be picking the flags, or we call them iris. She would be picking the snowball bushes, and if there was some roses up by then, we'd be picking roses, and if it was a normal year, there usually would be some available, and many other plants from her garden, peonies especially, and we would be putting bouquets together with some greenery. There was always some juniper there, some holly, and we would create these beautiful bouquets to take to the cemeteries. And usually we would travel to Logan, up there to see that, Centerville. And that would be a wonderful experience with my grandmother. Also, there was many times when I spent time in her yard running around, and she had these strawberries.
Oh,
and
yes.
She planted them under her rose bushes, of all places, as a ground cover, and we had many a morning of fresh strawberries with our cereal because of her. And she would make the fresh preserves, and we were right there with that. And she was from Danish descent, and so it was just this great opportunity to know my grandmother better. And a few years ago we had a family reunion, and before that reunion, that whole week I was thinking of grandmother and all these plants, and didn't even realize what a huge influence she was. And I happen to have a greenhouse in my backyard that's about 1,400 square feet, and I had...
Sure, no problem. Everybody's got one of those, right?
It's one of my hobbies too. I do it for a living, but it's also this hobby.
Yeah.
And I got this like inspiration, LaRene, you need to take some plants to this family reunion up in Albion, Idaho, and share these with your family. And it ended up that as I loaded my Suburban with everything I needed, and then I filled it with plants. Many trays of lilies, like this lily right here, and cranesbill, and iris, and daylilies, and bleeding hearts. And it was summertime, and I had propagated these, not knowing that's what I was going to do with some of them. And I got up there, and everybody was curious, what are these plants for? I waited till after the family meeting, and then I said, I've got some things to say about these plants. everybody's curious about them, right? Let me tell you about grandmother's influence in my life for plants. And I was able to go through for a few minutes and just share where they were growing in her garden and how I learned about them. And then I said, okay, aunts and uncles, you get to choose first. Choose a handful to go home to your garden, and then cousins join in, and then your families join in. And by the time we were finished, there was only a small handful left, and by the time we left, they were all gone. And the cool thing was, is since then I've had a few texts and phone calls from cousins saying, I'm in my garden and I'm looking at the plants you gave me for grandmother's garden, and thank you. And it just brought us together, even just for a fun moment.
What was her name?
Florence LaVere Sorensen.
Wow. Well, you know, the funny thing is, so that was your grandmother. I don't know if we've never talked about this. My grandfather, my gramps, his wife, my grandmother that I never met, she died when she was 42. My mom was 14.
Oh.
Her name was Florence.
Florence, yeah.
Really? Wow.
Beautiful.
There's one plant that you introduced me to that I have to admit is now my favorite, and it's an Ito peony peony.
Yes.
And to me, to think that plant, I hate to say this, but that plant's going to outlive me.
Yes,
Okay?
it will. Those
So-
are marvelous.
When is a plant more than a plant? When is a tree more than a tree? Because
They're always more than a plant and more
Yeah.
than a tree, and the influence that they give us in our lives. I look around here in this garden and in every garden, and as I drive along, I just realized a few years ago that people don't see the world as I see it. They don't see the earth as I see it. I know that those grapevines over there are going to produce fruit. I know what they're going to look like in the fall. I know that when they're in the winter zone of their life, that what I can trim and what I can't, what I should and shouldn't do. And I know how to seed things out. It influences our lives so much. And you know, you talk about some of these huge trees even that recently in the storms have blown over, and what they've been through,
Yeah.
and what experiences they are, who's climbed in them, who sat under them and enjoyed a picnic or enjoyed the shade or took a nap, and what gift that tree is to us, what gift those plants are.
I see parallels between nature and life because it's kind of intermingled. And the fact that these trees are bending, you know, and that they're surviving, and some of these old trees have been through a lot, they've seen a lot. There's a little poem that you say that I just absolutely love. Do you mind sharing that for me?
The name of the poem is either Adversity or Good Timber, depending on which source you look at.
Yeah.
But it goes like this. The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but lived out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger tree. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By wind and rain and sun and cold, in trees and men, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarch of both. And they hold counsel with the stars, where broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of life. This is the common law of life. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
My father taught me that poem. When I was young, he would recite poems, and I asked him to teach them to me. And I have all these poems handwritten by him.
Really?
And we would get together and we would memorize them.
Oh my heavens! Now that's such a legacy. I didn't realize that. It's beautiful. But the other thing that brings to mind, and you and I have shared this a bit before, but you know, we've had a lot of wins lately. We've got a heck of a win, you know, with this COVID thing. But you've been through a lot of wins, and you're a survivor. There's a particular thing that you've been dealing with for a number of years. Are you okay with sharing that?
Sure. We all have difficulty in our lives, and I think so much of it is the perspective we take of that. When I was younger, I always thought I would be a mother stay-at-home, typical fairy tale family, that what my dream was, and that I would just be the best mom and be the best wife and the best friend and the best confidant. And I've been able to be a lot of those things, but unfortunately my marriage has failed. And I didn't realize why. For many, many years, I just thought it was me. I thought there was just, what is wrong with me? And I've been studying narcissism. And I think that is something that is not known well. It's not talked about a lot unless you make the effort. And there's a lot of information out there. There's some wonderful YouTubes, there's some TED Talks, and I'm so grateful for those. And as I have listened to those the last few years, it's like, that's me. Those are the words. I was so silenced because I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know why I was experiencing what I was experiencing and why I was having such difficulty.
Narcissists are, they're an interesting group, aren't they? So now there's a regular narcissist, which is kind of, the ones where they aren't wrong, everything's there and everything, but then there's also covert narcissists. And those are the guys and gals, but that are puppeteers. They make it look like they're the golden people, and yet everybody else is the ones the problem. And then they got these flying monkeys that believe them, and yet, make you wonder what the heck's wrong with you.
Yeah.
How did you recognize that you were, I don't know if victim's the right word, but that you were being targeted or impacted by a narcissist?
Well, years ago, and I have these notes and I found them this last year, I was in some counseling about 18 years ago, and this man said, you need to look up narcissism and you need to become familiar with that, because I think he recognized that was some of the challenges in my life. And so I did that, but I didn't understand it enough, or maybe there wasn't enough information out there readily available. And I was just still, again, happy-go-lucky, butterfly, LaRene, searching and dealing with it and saying, I can overcome this. We can together make this work. Mm-hmm. And that never happened. And I was what you call silenced, where I just didn't buck it anymore. I just accepted that that's what it was. And my life spiraled down. I many times wanted to end it. I wanted to jump out of the car when it was going 50 miles an hour, but then I thought of my children. I quit eating at one point in time. I got down to less than 115 pounds and quit weighing myself at that point in time. I remember one day, it was a beautiful Thanksgiving day, and I remember standing by my mother's green railing in her kitchen, and I was approached and told, you're looking really skinny, you better start eating. And I was fisted with a finger. And I just went, what I really need is for someone to just envelop me with some love and compassion and joy and peace, because I felt like there was bars on the windows of my home, and that I was in this prison that I was not able to get out of. Even though I could leave it, it was just always there. And I don't understand all that still. I'm still working that. I do forgive him and them in my life, those who act that out. I forgive myself most of all and first for allowing it, for not understanding it, for putting up with it for so long. I love my children dearly and do my best to help them through it. Some of them struggle with it greatly. They were gaslighted through the years, and it saddens me, yet I'm very resilient about it, and I choose that. And I choose to get help. I think that when I first crawled to counseling, I don't know that showed up so much about that. I went for me, and it was always in my family, counseling, it's just a waste of time and energy and effort and money, and they really don't know what they're talking about, and how could they because of this? And that was what the culture of my family said from a couple of generations, and I just didn't honor that. I didn't understand it. I didn't realize how important and how helpful it is. And I have changed a lot since that beginning of all that. And I'm continuing to change. Some days I feel like I changed so much this day or this week that I don't fit into last week anymore. I could never go back to yesterday and fit in, which is a beautiful thing to move on, because I believe that moving on is really important, and to realize that we're enough, Doug. You and I, we're enough. And every day we're enough. Every moment we're enough. And when we feel like we're not, that's when we get in trouble. That's when we get feeling shameful and we lose our vulnerability, and the guilt creeps in, and we feel like we're not enough.
The overlying thing that I've seen on both the regular narcissist and the covert is lack of empathy. I mean, these people just, they don't have that as part of their DNA or something. I don't know what
they're not nice. At times, they can be so nice to everybody else. My challenge was, I would say, look, you need to be nice like you're nice to these friends of ours, or to this one of your clients, this lady mower lawn for. I would say that, and I would put it out there thinking that he would get it, and he never did. And there were just times when it's like, be nice to me. I had to literally cut myself in visualizing myself cutting that relationship away out of my life, and I have to totally be away from it now, because it does not serve me well. It doesn't make me better. And I think if you're in a situation with whether employment or family or a close relationship like a middle relationship, friends or friends of friends, if you're in a situation where it's not healthy, you need to get away from it. You need to get out of it, and you need to stand tall.
Yes.
And feel loved, and especially feel loved by yourself.
You know, and I think that's the hardest part, because we're all so hard on ourselves.
We are.
You know, and that's the thing.
But we don't need to be. You know what?
Right.
More than enough.
Yeah.
I am more than enough. That's written on my arm today. It is not a tattoo permanent, but I am more than enough, and it's so beautiful, and I'm so grateful, Doug.
Right.
I'm so grateful we can talk about this and share it with others, because it is not talked about enough. And the last few years, I believe there's a lot more that's come out about narcissism and about self-love and taking care of ourselves and standing tall and choosing to make it different, not just continuing in this minutia of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, and I'm sad, and I'm sad, and I'm sad. Quit being sad and do something about it.
Right, because it's a cancer. I mean, you need to, like you said, you need to surgically remove that. Well, and the other thing, bluntly, that I look at is the thing that narcissists hate the most.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Is ignoring them.
Yes.
Because they don't feed the beast. You know, it's like, okay,
you
you are cut out of my life. You do whatever you're going to do, but it's not going to be with me.
And you know, Doug, I'm still sad about it, but I don't play that sadness out. I find joy and peace and love everywhere I go, and plants especially help me with that. And I've nurtured a lot of plants. I've been in my own greenhouse for hours and days and months and years to work through it. And boy, does gardening help.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, because that's the thing, to be able to focus on something that you love,
well,
to
it's
be able to
nurturing
focus on yourself
and sharing,
yes.
and it's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for being able to talk about it.
Thank you. Number one, I want to thank you for coming on. And of course, I want to also thank the folks that make this possible. You know, we've got the folks at Rustico that make my journals.
Well, Doug, you keep it fun, which is also part of my mantra, is keeping it fun and making us laugh and keeping it joyful.
Well, I'm trying. You know, JW Custom Hats, you got to have a good hat. Taylor Cooperative tries to make me look good, but the guy that really makes me look good is that guy right over there, Ed.
Yes,
Hi, Ed. There you go.
Yay, thank you so much.
And of course, we've got the folks with, Ogden's Own Distillery, my hand sanitizer, and adult beverages. Here's one thing I want people to remember. That's you guys out there watching, okay? Stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's journal and LaRene Bautner, I'm Doug Jessop, ABC4 News.